Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So on the agenda tonight, we have Hank Sugarfoot Garland, and this is going to be coming back from 1949, maybe the early 1950s here, but he's going to be playing through his track Sugarfoot Rag. So let's get Hank up on screen and see how he gets on. And there it is. So quite a quick performance, this one, not a very long track. And just to explain about the tone, there is a little bit of that tape delay, as you could hear right at the end of the piece there. So the notes are getting repeated straight after having actually played them. You can see the amount of technique that's on show here. There's so much alternate picking going on here with Hank, because it's got to be so organized in order to follow these notes on so smoothly after each other. And there is a bone of contention about this track in particular, because some people say that Bernie B. Smith Jr. wrote this 2 years before, and it was called Bernie's Reel at that point. But this is known as Sugarfoot Rag, and this is Hank Sugarfoot Garland, and this actually sold over 1 million copies. So back in the day, early 50s, that is mighty impressive, because they couldn't download it from iTunes. It was just literally people going out and buying it, having heard it on the radio, or having seen it on TV. And I mentioned technique when I stopped the video earlier, and I just want to explain a few things, because Hank uses a lot of double stops here, and that's when you play two strings at the same time and two separate notes, and he also slides up whilst holding down those two notes, so it gives it a great sound. The other thing that he uses, and this is really important for this style of playing, when you're following on notes quickly after one another, you want to keep your fingers organized on that left hand, and you do that by having one finger per fret. So it means that when you are playing a line and any scale, the next note that you want will be underneath one of your fingers. You don't have to move your hand in order to find them. Sometimes, obviously, if you are ascending a scale and you have to go higher up that guitar neck, it means that you will have to shift your hand up. But you'll find that Hank always has that really controlled position with that left hand, very strict with that fingering, which he has to be. And this is often the case when people struggle to speed up their playing. It's because they might be playing the second finger instead of the first finger, and the third finger instead of the little finger. They'll be stretching and having to move whilst playing, rather than just literally pushing down onto the fretboard. They've got to actually move their finger to the position, and having one finger per fret just eradicates that problem. So a lot of technique going on here, and also at 1 minute and 7, around that kind of time, we had a run that did have the hammer-ons and pull-offs that you can look out for if you want to rewind it. But the great thing about the way that Hank could play is that he could throw in alternate picking just to accentuate some of those notes, so that the hammer-ons and pull-offs might only be 1 or 2 notes, and then for that third note he'd give it a pick in order to just maintain that sustain and make every one of these notes really nice and clear as he's playing through. And of course a really clean tone here as well, so everything's got to be absolutely spot on with the technique. And I know that we have got that tape delay that's just going to be effectively echoing every last note that he's played, but If you mess up, it means that you're going to get a messed up note that's repeated. So you've still got to be absolutely on the ball throughout the whole performance. When I say about keeping that left hand organized, of course you've got to keep the right hand organized as well. And those two have got to be perfectly synchronized. And the other thing about alternate picking is that it's got to be so efficient in order to go in the right direction all the time. You've got to be traveling to your next note before you get there. If you start going in the wrong direction, it means that then you're spending a lot of time going away from the string that you want to get to. So of course it would take longer to get there. So just watching Hank's right hand, you can see how organized that is. Just constantly on the move, up and down, really just drifting across those strings. I know I'm talking a lot about technique here, but just another thing that I want to point out is that around about 1 minute 13, we've got some really cool palm muted arpeggio runs that he's playing. And just rewind it if you want to have a listen to that, because not only is Hank effectively picking out the notes of a chord by playing these strings individually, playing those notes separately, but he's also putting in palm muting, which is just adding two techniques together, because if you were just playing those notes like the rest of the piece that he's done so far, there won't be any difference in what he's playing, whereas he's just going for that slightly different expression and just makes it interesting to listen to because it's changing the dynamic of that particular part of the performance. Hank started playing guitar at age 6, so he was an early starter, and at age 12 he was playing at his local radio show. Aged 14 was when he actually got discovered at his local record store, and at age 18 is when he recorded this Sugarfoot Rag, and then it was released and, like I said, sold over 1 million copies. But in the early 50s he then got on TV, as we can see where these videos come from. He's probably most well known for his stuff with Elvis though. The work that he did with Elvis was between 1958 and 1961. But Hank worked with a lot of other artists as well. We had Patsy Cline and Brenda Lee and Roy Orbison and the Everly Brothers in there as well. He's worked with so many different artists, and his playing is so well known. Even if you don't think you know his playing, you probably do. Let me just give you a couple of examples, because at Christmas time, everyone hears these tracks all the time. You've got Hank's playing on Jingle Bell Rock, and that's by Bobby Helms. But also we've got Brenda Lee rocking around the Christmas tree. So listen to those tracks, because that's Hank playing all of those lines. And also, especially rocking around the Christmas tree, there's a lot of those double stops in there. Certainly his own playing style and his own sound, that he really did give these songs personality with his playing, with that classic clean tone, but just great playing and great melodic playing as well. It's almost like on those tracks in particular, the lead vocal is just as memorable as the guitar parts that are going on in the background and going in between those vocal phrases. So get on the Christmas hits and just have a listen to those two tracks, because then you'll be able to really get an appreciation of how good Hank was as a player, just a session guy as well, throwing in exactly what each track needed. As you can see, Hank's playing a Gibson guitar here, and Ted McCarty, who was the president of Gibson Guitars at the time, asked Hank and Billy Bird to design their own Gibson guitar. So they pretty much worked from the Gibson L5, just made it slimmer and also at a shorter scale so that it was easier to play. And they called that the Birdland, just by combining Billy Bird's second name and Hank Garland's second name as well, and that's how they came up with the Birdland guitar. And unfortunately, the reason that his work with Elvis stopped in '61 was because in that year he was involved in a car accident which actually left him in a coma, and he managed to pull through that thanks to his wife and his 2 children, but he never recovered sufficiently to get back to playing guitar or working in the studios. As we can see from this video, Hank was such a great player with great technique, but also on those recordings, like the 2 that I mentioned, he had such a tasteful way of playing. I mean, just listen to Jingle Bell Rock and listen to that intro. It's absolutely timeless, and that is Hank Garland. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!